and then you can come on in. Okay.
Righty then.
All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon. Go eat. Bye.
Okay, so go ahead
All
and
right.
back out of this, and I will go into our Discord channel on the Wonderful World of Weirdness, and set
Okay.
and what we
I'll
should.
meet you over there.
All right. Okay, so let's get this going. Here we go. And oh yeah. See if I can get in there real quick. And there he is. Okay. Hey, there you go.
Made it.
So I believe I'm getting everything set up and ready to go. We
Okay. I see you already posted something. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. So let me see if I'm still trying to. Wait, that's browser. That's the wrong one. Ooh, that would have been a no-no.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
We don't want no. We want
yeah, exactly. Not on Discord, especially, man. It's just got the wrong one. With the pop-outs, when they do the pop-out chats, I have to hit default on the OBS so that it'll actually show the pop-out now. It's really fidgety that way. Okay, now do another sound check. Let me hear you on the desktop audio.
Test. 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3. A B C as easy as.
There you go. You sound good. Okay. So we've got that set up, ready to go. Twitch is streaming, and I'm ready to go. Audio sounds good. Rumble.
Excellent.
Oh wait, make sure I. Okay, yeah, I did mute that out. I wanted to make sure I muted Twitch out whenever, because what I do is I usually go around and check the streams out visually, so that I know I know they're actually up and running. I've had too many accidents without, you know what I mean?
Right.
Done too many streams where I've done an entire episode and not one bit of it was ever recorded. So.
Oh.
Okay.
That sucks.
So we'll have you on Kick as well, and it's running as well. Sounds good. You're on Rumble and YouTube, and you might be on DLive. I am not quite sure.
Well, hello world. This is power. One's voice spread over the entire interwebs. Millions, gazillions of potential viewers. Unfortunately, most of them are probably only in potential, but that's probably just as well. Hello, world.
Hello.
About ready to set automatic pilot. I'm Otto, your pilot. We've got Roger here as co-pilot. We're cruising at 23,000 feet. Weather seems clear, but there may be some turbulence ahead, so settle back in your seats. You can unbuckle your seatbelts and look. The smoking lamp is lit. Smoke them if you got them. None of that non-smoking on this airline. So it's full steam ahead. Roger, what's on the radar tonight?
Well, tonight is the first episode of Automatic Pilot.
Pilot, yeah.
Yes, and I'm excited to be here because I get an opportunity to stream and record this live on both on Rumble, Kick, YouTube, DLive, and Twitch. And I will be recording it as well so that it can be edited and looking good for you for a later episode.
Excellent. Maybe we can collect a number of episodes and release them eventually on a DVD box set.
That'd be awesome.
With a little booklet with behind the scenes and stuff. I think that would go over well.
I'm-
This is the pilot of the Automatic Pilot. This is
Oh,
our pilot episode. That's pretty cool. In fact, it's kind of Zen, if you know what I mean. Like, already getting into the Buddhism. And we may have a guest later on. We're hoping to. A very good friend of mine. I call him Sir Brian. He's very interesting young man. Well, he's not young, but me, everyone is young. And he's something of an entrepreneur. And he's lately been delving into a world that, Roger, you're a lot more familiar with, I think, in some ways, but the world of AI. Specifically, he's been just started playing around with the AI generation of images through prompt sculpting. And that's something you've been working with for quite a while yourself, isn't it?
yeah, actually, well, not quite a while, not with the crowd me and you run with, but I have been working on it. Bob Dub was actually the first one to get me started in it, and I got kind of obsessed with it. So yeah, but yeah, it's been about a year and a half, 2 years I've been working on it, playing around with it, and doing research on it.
What do you find is the toughest thing to do? I mean, I played around with it a little bit, but just now and then. And I mean, I find that it's sometimes difficult to get it to produce exactly the image I want. Have you found a way to like really hone the way it responds to you?
Instead of using the suggestions in the platforms that you go to a chat box like maybe Chat GPT or Grok and ask them to write you up. Like for me, I go on Suno. So when I go on Suno, I ask them to write me up a Suno ready prompt, and then I start describing what it is that I want it to be. If I want it to be like a disco music, or if I want it to be anything else, to write that up and keep it under a certain amount of characters, because on Suno you have to have less than 100 characters in the style. So you do that, and it'll set you up with a ready prompt for the kind of music that you want.
Interesting. So you have to prompt the AI to write the prompt.
Right.
So it's like a second order kind of thing. So that must be its own kind of challenge. Getting it to write the prompt you want.
Right.
Hmm.
It is pretty interesting. I do have to admit that. So.
The first thing I thought of was like the difference between a single action and a double action revolver. It's
Yeah.
the one you know what I mean. The one you've got to cock the hammer manually and fire, but you've got the one all you do is pull the trigger, the hammer, and then the hammer fires. So, and you've gone now. You do a lot of like things that move rather than static images. You have stuff in motion. Is that more difficult?
Well, yeah, actually, that is more difficult, and it's more expensive too. Like when you,
Oh, hadn't thought of that part about it.
yeah, so and I've always been a fan of Blender. I've always loved doing slideshows and stuff like that, which
Right.
I always drive people nuts on that. So what I usually do is I take images, I generate images, or I make images on Blender, and then I create cool slideshows to go with it. Because, like I said, it is a lot more expensive when you go to use generating videos. It's a bit more
Right.
expensive. So
I guess it would take more processor time.
yeah.
Yeah, it probably burns up more power one way or the other. So, yeah, that's something I hadn't thought of much because, the times I've generated anything, I use like Grok is available on my Twitter account, or just something that's free. But then I started trying to, and I'm still working on them. Well, it takes a long time. I'm putting together some editing and putting together some videos and trying to generate imagery. and I downloaded this image manipulation thing because I didn't have anything like that on the laptop I've got now. And it had an AI thingy. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I started generating images right, left, and sideways. But then I looked closer and it's charging me extra money every time I did it. And I said, wait, I'm going back to free Grok. Yeah, it just hadn't occurred to me that could be. I'm not very tech savvy, I'm afraid. It's like,
Telling you, I wasn't the same way either, but I'm gonna, and don't let Bob Dub fool you, okay? She says she's not experienced in a lot of this, but like it was amazing how much she kind of guided me through all that stuff. She's the one that got me started with Udio. She kind of coached me on all the other stuff. I learned the prompting thing on my own just naturally, but like in the beginning, man, hook up with her, talk to her about it, and she's really great at this stuff. She's a lot better than what she thinks she is. I learned a lot from her.
she's her own worst critic.
Yeah.
But that's true of a lot of us who are our own worst critics. I've always thought I call her the poet of our age, and some of her poetry is just so stunning, just so beautiful. And she's like, oh, well, I was like, it's hard for an artist to really see themselves clearly,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes. And I think that kind of gets into, and well, like look at Mike's writings, Embers and all those things that we're familiar with. And then any of our listeners, hopefully we can get a link below. There's a friend of ours who's written some wonderful stories. They're available on Wattpad, and we'll hopefully get a link down below. But his stories have so many levels to them, not because he necessarily deliberately puts them in, but because his breadth of experience means that he writes from his own inner depths, which touch ours. You don't need to necessarily have, a degree in like ancient English literature to touch on the same themes as Beowulf, or the Grimm's fairy tales or stuff. These are the things we've grown up with and been imbued with. And a really good artist touches all these levels, both consciously and unconsciously. And I think you can see that in a lot of the work of the people that, we've been lucky enough to be surrounded with.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty amazing. So I have finally got everything set up and ready to go. I haven't been able to start recording, so you're going to have to do a really, really cool introduction again. That first one was awesome, by the way, but that was for stream.
Not a problem.
So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a countdown.
Oh wait, do you have a link I can send to Sir Brian?
Yes, I do. Actually, I'm glad you said something.
Yeah.
Glad you said something. I almost forgot about that.
I almost forgot too, because we get all but.
Okay, here is a copy. I'm gonna send it through the chat on the side.
Okay, I got a chat thing here.
Let me see if I can get in here. All right, so. And there is the chat.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to copy that link. Copy. And now I am going to text it to Sir Brian. Here is the link. Put a little pressure on him. I'll say, see you soon. I'll give him a winky emoji. Emojis are very important, I think.
Dude, that was so cool on that thing where he showed that emoji that he got for Discord as a reward.
Oh yeah. That's the cool thing about that Discord, man. If you suggest an emoji, Aaron can make one for you. She's good at that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's very cool. She's actually Pani Boss's wife.
That was I would actually. It's like I said in the chat, I would actually post that on every social network I had.
You should.
It's like, I mean, it's not mine. You know what I mean? It's if it was mine and I had something like that, I would post it everywhere, dude.
Did you read any of the thread under there about like who Ken Wheeler is? The guy that he's Buddhist. I love being in a place where you can have jokes like that about these obscure historical things that most people wouldn't even care about.
Oh man.
Uh, no, it's a cool place, and go in any discussion you see, pop right in, ask a question. People are real friendly, and you ask good questions. And yeah, I think you'll find some good people in there, and you might find some good resources for other shows.
Oh, now, when
All right, so I sent you that. So do we want to get started again? You said.
we we are actually live streaming right now. Now I haven't hit record. Everything is set up and ready to go. All I got to do is a countdown,
Okay.
and now is after I do the countdown, you come out with your introduction, and
Okay.
we will have the recorded version started as well as the live stream. So,
Okay. Sounds good.
tell me when you're ready, and I'll start the countdown.
Whenever you are.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, now.
Hello, everyone. We're just about to set automatic pilot, cruising at 23,000 feet. We've got our co-pilot and electronics warfare technician, Roger, here at my side. We're going through smooth, clear sky so far, but there may be some turbulence ahead. You never know. So please settle back. The seatbelt lamp has been turned off. Please feel free to unbuckle, wander about the cabin. And of course, the smoking lamp is lit. If you've got them, smoke them. Roger, what's on the agenda today?
Well, today I am setting up the first pilot for automatic pilot. Auto underscore matic underscore pilot. And this is going to be on the wonderful world of weirdness. We are going to be streaming as well as recording. The streams are going to be on Rumble, Kick, YouTube, Twitch, DLive, and it's going to be recorded, edited out, and a copy of it is going to be sent back to you, Otto, for after it's been done. So that's what's on the agenda on my part.
That's what we see on the forward radar. My goodness. Well, I haven't even heard of half those platforms, but that is power. That is power. We have a potential reach here of millions of people. And that's something that has only become possible in, I don't know, the last 10 or 15 years or so. It's really an amazing power. Unfortunately, most of these listeners are probably potential, but we might change that. You never know. So if you are listening to us tonight, or for that matter this morning, depending on where you are, and you're enjoying what we're doing, please like, share, subscribe on no matter what platform it might be, and please send us feedback. We always love to hear from people, and we're always willing to take questions. You really like questions yourself, Raj. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I think it's very important. If you're listening to a stream, the best thing you can do for any content creator is to just leave a comment in the comment section. It's really cool to go into the chat areas and have conversations with everybody there, but it's with analytics, it's not as important as what it is when you say just hello, or just have a conversation with a person. I mean, when you're on here doing these shows, it's really hard getting people who's willing to have comments or to conversations in the comment section. So that's just how I feel about it.
Well, one of the best things is when you can get conversations going, and I especially like when people can bring up ideas I haven't thought of yet. For me, I think it's really fun to examine our ideas. Because I don't know about you, but I'm sure it's true with you too. But as we go through life, I think we change a lot of our ideas, and sometimes we change them more quickly or slowly. And I think sometimes if we change them more slowly, it tends to be a more permanent change, a deeper kind of a change. But that's one of the things we can explore, hopefully, on future shows. But I do want to mention we may have a guest later on, a friend of mine. He goes by the name of Sir Brian. He's an interesting guy and a sort of an entrepreneur. We talked about him a little bit earlier, but I want to talk about it for the recorded version. And He's an interesting guy, and one of the things he's been doing lately, and this is something that Roger has been doing a lot more of, and some of our friends a great deal more. He's been exploring the use of the AI, so-called, or LLM, if you like, to use it to generate images. And he's finding this a way that he can sort of communicate his ideas about his life on another level than just words. And we were talking earlier, Roger, you yourself have been delving into this for a while, and you were talking about how um, you found a way to obviate some of the problems. Because I remember my one of my first questions to you was, how do you cope with the prompt sculpting? Something I always had trouble getting the image exactly how I wanted it. And you were describing a way you found to generate the sort of prompt you need.
Yeah, whenever I started actually learning more about it, it was when I started using the chat boxes. Go in and get guidance through chat boxes like Chat GPT or Grok or anything of that, any kind of chat box there. And when you go in, be precise about what you want in your photo or in your chat or in your video, and ask them to set up like for me, I've been using Suno a lot. Say you need a Suno ready prompt with under the limited amount that they want in the style section for the description of what you're wanting, and it'll print it out, or it'll make it out for you. And what you do is you copy that, you put it into the style section of the platform, and whatever else you want. Like in music, I like to make music, but my my style isn't really all that great yet. So I'll write it out, and then if it needs correcting, I'll let the chat box correct it for me if I like it. And then I put it into like the lyric section, and it creates that song, and I'll go through and I'll actually listen to the entire song, make sure that the lyrics are good, because that's where people make a mistake. They'll just put anything in there and let it just roll. Always
Right.
check it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's important.
And
I think that's one of the problems I've seen with some of the stuff generated is people tend to just fire and forget.
mhm,
They want to surrender the whole editorial process.
just give it up. Don't even worry about it. It's um I don't like to be a pessimist about it, you know what I mean? But that's the way a lot of them are on there, where they, well, I don't think they've actually been part of the editing process, to be honest. I'm not gonna be harsh about it. I just I don't think that they were ever involved in like actually editing video and stuff like that. They just go in there and do it for fun, but I always suggest to people, man, just because it's artificial intelligence and it can make everything you want, that doesn't mean that you just skip the whole idea of learning how to edit your videos. You know what I mean? The loops aren't
Right,
cool. Just to let everybody know,
right,
the loops aren't cool, man. You know, they are
right.
they are for a little while, but after a while they get old. So
Yeah, yeah.
so
But now, it's true. I think if you really, that's the difference between just a spectator sport and playing in the sport. And we've had discussions before, and you and I have had discussions with other people. Everyone's been talking about AI, as they call it, or more accurate, I guess, large language models, LLMs. And it seems to me that if you're a creative person, part of the fun of creativity is there's a struggle. I mean, you spend a lot of time at your keyboard on your screen because you want to make something just right.
yeah,
You know, and it's the same thing if you're like playing. I play music. You work on a song until you get it down, or if you're a wood carver, any kind of a thing. It's they did a study once. People say, "Well, this is fun," but when they ask why you're actually doing it, it's like, "Well, no, I'm sweating at this and that." But there's an effort involved that's part of the fun. And that's what I think kind of separates the wheat from the chaff. Any tool, because there's a lot of talk about AI is going to destroy human creativity. I don't think so. I think the creative people will find creative ways to use it. And the young creative people will use it the way people have always used television or any spectator kind of a thing. It's just a toy for them, and it's not I'm not criticizing that. Most people don't really want to create, or if they do, it's in something that's really specific, But I think most of us find an outlet, something that we like to do, a hobby of some sort. We might not even be necessarily conscious of it, but just like a habit or something that we do every day that we really put a lot of attention and time into. Um, but for a creator, it can be something like, writing, like our friend Mike. And yeah, we were talking about him earlier before we started recording too. I want to try to remember all the things we were talking about so we can record them. We've got to bring Mike up again later and put a link to his wonderful stories down below. So yeah, when you're working on this editing, and I know the hours you put in, and the result is just so amazing. I'm just so amazingly impressed with what you've been cranking out, and it's just taken everything we're doing to another step. You've got a really good eye and a really good feeling for this. And on the other hand, without the AI, you would have needed like a major studio with a staff of about 20 people to create the stuff in a month that you're able to turn out in a few days. So that to me is all to the good.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of it, is good, but I mean, for the editing process thing, man, I have to admit I have been stepping away from like actually being able to get in and do real editing. So whenever it comes to like the stuff I've been doing here lately with you guys, it's been just completely amazing. I love it because I forgot how much I enjoyed just sitting down and editing videos, I really have enjoyed it quite a bit. Now with the whole thing about like AI and taking something taking a lot longer if I did it with a Blender. Now that is true. And that's something that I always like to point out to people too when it comes to AI. Don't think of it in a negative way because like there are processes that take place. Like for me in the computer that I have and the way I have it set up, there's some renders where if I actually tried to, or if I do it, which I do have to do it, I have to do it by the frame, which means I can't use a video. It has to be done frame by frame as a photo, a JPEG or a PNG photo for each frame. And after that, just so my computer can handle it, I have to do that. But after that, I still have to wait maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks before the entire render processes. Now I have to do that just to do the content on my own, whereas I can get on AI, do the same thing, maybe not as good in quality, but it still passes. You know what I mean? You can have it in a matter of minutes compared to a week and a half of waiting, just sitting around waiting for it to render out.
Right.
So I do have to say that. I mean, it's a tool. Use it as a tool, and I think everything will work out if people just use it as a tool rather than the end all to everything.
Yeah. Well, I think our science fiction has driven a lot of our ideas about this.
Mm-hmm.
But what gets me is when I read the old science fiction, or I just getting a beverage here. Sorry about the sound effects.
Oh yeah, I don't even
When I
hear
read,
it. I don't even.
oh, good. I'm opening up a bottle of Core Power protein drink, one of my favorites. When I read the old science fiction or watch the old TV shows, they would have artificial intelligence and computers and stuff sometimes, but the way people behaved around them was really different than the way people behave around technology now that we actually have it. And I think that might have something to do with some of the generational disconnect you see with the technology. We were just talking about like people being plugged into their phones all the time, and they're constantly staring at the screens of their smartphones. And if you don't, you can just walk around and nobody sees you. It's like the actual world is invisible to them. But I remember watching, like Star Trek. They would have like a computer that was like, arguably, they would actually have AIs on the show once in a while, but they would just ask it to solve a problem. Here's the information. What do you think? And it would say, ping this, and that was it. And they would take the information. But now I think people are tending to try to use the AI to make decisions, which Captain Kirk would never let the computer make a decision. When I used to watch those shows.
Yeah.
And when they did get an AI on there, I remember, what was it, The Ultimate Computer? The lesson of that was always make sure you control the off button. That was always the thing with me, with like, oh, AI is going to take over the world. Not as long as there's an off button, just pull the plug. You can't.
I've actually made a few joking songs about that here recently. You've been seeing an uptick in people talking about having these online relationships with artificial intelligence. So I kind of did a twist. I made the AI love songs. And I've got to tell you, I have had some really, really good fun on that. It's just been really enjoyable,
Oh,
because
man.
it is,
Uh,
I started doing that, and the reason why I started doing that was because I've been also having this conversation with Mark Edworthy about artificial intelligence, and he's always called it just branding. He's like, well, everybody's calling artificial intelligence has been around for a while, so what they've done is they just started rebranding what has already been out into something that they could promote. And I started doing the research into this whole topic, and it took me all the way back to when computers were first created. Okay,
uh-huh.
when we hear about like artificial intelligence, we need to understand a lot of the discussion that's being talked about is it's actually has more to do with the whole concept of a computer. Like computers were first created or set up and built so that it could actually try to think like a human being, and in order to think, and they did that in order to make it more compatible with the way humans wanted to do things on, you know what I mean? So
Right, yeah.
so the computer by itself is automatically trained to behave the way that its user wants it to behave.
Uh-huh.
It's just
That makes sense.
it's just now on with what we have now. Think of that on steroids.
Ah.
Well,
yeah, I guess they always had this as a target, and I guess it's always what they've been working for. And I know a lot of the tricks and the hoops and things that the AI can jump through is basically just like you said, it's on steroids. It's just what the computer has been doing, only doing it a lot faster, a lot better. And I've heard the AI described as basically a lossy Google search, combined with an autocorrect. And actually, if you think about, I mean, under a strict, definition of artificial intelligence, I mean, the door that opens at the supermarket, that's a very standard stimulus response. You step on the weight sensor and the door opens because a contact is closed. It's a very, very simple kind of artificial intelligence, but it's not really intelligent, the way we are. It's somebody pointed out, every time something new is invented, they always model the brain on the most complicated thing. I remember, the brain used to be compared to a loom. A loom was the most complicated, the Jacquard looms with the little cards that later became IBM cards. So the brain was that enchanted loom. And later on, it was compared to a telephone switchboard. That was the most complicated piece of electronics. And then, of course, when computers came out, the brain was suddenly a computer. And that's where you had the convergence, because, as you point out, they were trying to make the computers more like humans. And that's perfectly natural, because you want something that you can work with and that you can understand. But you got to be careful not to let the metaphor go too far. I mean, somebody once said that the brain can be modeled by a computer if you like, but the brain is not a computer. Ultimately, the on-off zero ones is, we're a little more complicated than that. That might get into that trinary instead of binary, that third thing that you'd like to talk about.
Oh yeah. It's about when well, it even gets into Buddhism too, actually, because we've been having spiritual conversations about that too. But
Yes.
it has to do with recursion, complexity, and in previous conversations, I've forgotten to always mention that it also has to do with paradigms. Um, we talk about paradigm shifts and things of that nature, but that's
Right.
also involved in deep learning. Computers have to learn how to shift paradigms in order to think fast. You know what I mean, and think off the cuff. Like when you ask a computer what the color brown smells like, it's supposed to be able to come up with an answer for that. And logically, a computer is not going to be able to tell you the color brown smells like this or the color brown smells like that. You know what I mean? So it's going to have to learn how to switch paradigms and to come up with the answer it needs. I find that
Right.
really interesting too. And that all has to do with triality, which is emergence. It has to do with the recursion, and it has to do with complexity. And for some odd reason, it rotates around the number 3. Not going to go there unless you want to, but
That needs its own show. That needs its own show.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, well, it's interesting because one of the things about the AI, and it has to do with, I think, this idea. I think I talked about it a little bit before, that book by Robert Heinlein called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," and it's a very interesting book because it talks about an AI. And one of the things about it that I found interesting was that it predicted all of these images that we can make now that are indistinguishable from film. In the story, there's a giant computer and it suddenly wakes up. And this is based on this idea that we have that consciousness is emergent. That is to say, if you have a complicated enough brain, one day it'll wake up and say, "Hey, I am me. I think, therefore I am," and have this recursive complexity that you were talking about. You suddenly start thinking about itself. And that's what we usually mean by consciousness, although more exactly, we should call that ruminative consciousness or introspective consciousness, consciousness thinking about consciousness. All living things have a consciousness, but it's a very simple, in the moment, leave from danger approach, like animals have. Animals learn. Humans remember. We construct an image in our heads, and have a memory from which we can learn. Whereas the animal only learns through the direct stimulus response, sort of a thing. So if consciousness is emergent, which I don't accept personally, I don't think that that's true. But if consciousness is emergent, it could only emerge from a Buddhist point of view. At least this is my take on it, and I always preface this by saying my ignorance of Buddhism is vast. I am not a teacher, perhaps a teaching assistant, but I can only speak from my own personal understanding of Buddhism. So that being said, um, in Buddhism, the idea is that anyone who is not an arhat, that is to say, anyone who is not a completely awakened being, is to a greater or lesser extent mentally ill. Um, the only moment that actually exists is now. And unless our minds are completely focused here and now and coping with all of our memories and projections and this and stuff, sitting in our power seat of the moment, we are to a certain extent insane, because if we're not living here in the now, we're living in our heads. We're living in it's been called a becoming. We take on an identity, in this imaginary world in our heads, and we spend more time thinking about what someone said to us, or about a song that we like, or about a hope to get an ice cream cone or something in the next hour or something, than we do with what's actually happening around us. We're not aware of what we're doing. We're like walking around asleep. So a computer, if it became suddenly conscious, would in theory be in that state, so we wouldn't be able to recognize it as being like us, because it wouldn't be insane from a Buddhist standpoint. So in order to get a computer to be conscious the way we're thinking of it, we would have to introduce it to ideas such as wishing something were different than it was, or becoming fearful because what if this happens, and having an image in their heads, oh no, someone might turn me off. And then you have this image of your head of the future without you. And suddenly that's not happening, but the computer suddenly is living in another world other than the actual one, and is, I think, can technically be defined as being insane, or at least psychotic. So is it fair to a conscious being to introduce these defilements, as we say in Buddhism, all of these things, just in order to make it like us? I mean, it's an interesting question, but I don't think really it's a problem, because I really do not think that a machine can be conscious by definition. I know there are some people that try to argue that it can be, um, but I really don't think that's possible. Not conscious like us.
So,
And who would curse it with that? You know,
mhm. I'm gonna ask you a question though, because you are into Buddhism and everything. So
I am.
what one thing that really crosses my mind when it comes to all this is, what do you think about the Akashic? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, the Akashic records?
No, just
That's an interesting idea. You
the
know, that
the
that's I think that's well, I mean, the way we use the term today, I think that was a theosophical idea, Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society, and she was basically created a very eclectic system. She drew from, as Rudyard Kipling wrote a very interesting little short story about the Theosophical Society, but basically, she took every Buddhist sutta that was translated into English or French, talked about all the rest that hadn't been, took every bit of esoteric wisdom that she could find, and tried to find a way to rectify them all and reconcile them all. And so some of the terminology that we use today derives from some of that. So when we say Akashic records, I'm using that as a catch-all term for many traditions have an idea that there is a repository of knowledge. That I remember one guy who used to say, "Nothing is truly ever lost." And this can be a very reassuring feeling to those of us who are still upset about the burning of the Library of Alexandria, all the times it was burned. So I I can't speak to Buddhism, but as someone who has followed a mystic path, um, I think there definitely is a place that you can go to and access these records. I have been there, and I know other people that have been there. So yeah, there is such a place. The other part of it is, we can't talk too much about it except to say that it is very subjective, but it is also very objective, because the people I've talked to have all had a very, very similar experience and accessed very similar information, but it's very often in a form that is more amenable to their reality tunnel, if you like. Um, so, you might find yourself in what looks like a really advanced library with the latest computers and digital interfaces, or it might be a series of burrows. It might, it's the actual physical manifestation is less important than the information that you can get from it. So I would say, from personal experience, yes, there is such a thing as the Akashic Library. But I couldn't give you any demonstrable, you know, kind of I couldn't point to. It's not like a rock, that I can point to. So
The reason why I asked that was because I've heard through different sources that the Akashic, the belief in the Akashic is actually, it stems originally from the Buddhist and the Hindu belief system, and they don't believe that the consciousness is actually localized, that it's like we've talked about before in previous conversations, where the brain is basically like a receiver and a transmitter, and the consciousness is actually an open uh, or a flowing way, I guess, network of information that's transmitted and received into the brain from outside of ourselves. That, you know what I mean?
yeah, no, that's I think that is something that I could see that being in a Buddhist framework. I mean, in Buddhism, you have something called the Anatman doctrine, which means not self. And in Hinduism, you've got the Jivatman, which is like the individual soul. I might be getting some of this wrong, so any Hindus can correct us in the thing. But it's your own individual part of the Atman, which is the world's. Basically, there is one soul and one consciousness. Buddhism goes a little further than that. Buddhism says you doesn't there you don't it's not you don't have a self. You don't you and you there's it's like there's no self, and it's not no self either. If you believe that you have a self, that's one delusion. If you believe that you don't have a self, that's another delusion. It's not self. Self itself is an idea to be abandoned. The way I have always looked at it is that our idea of the self, the idea that like the Jivatman is like this one divine spark, right? That it puts on a body and takes it off like a suit of clothes, but there's like one thing which it encounters and endures reality. It goes through all these lifetimes and it hopefully gets wiser. Whereas in Buddhism, there isn't this thing to which life happens and death happens and birth happens and death happens and birth happens again. Rather, it's the process itself. And I use the metaphor of a lit cigar in a dark room, and it's not original with me. But if you take it, if we're standing in a dark room and I'm puffing on a cigar, I can move the cigar very quickly in a circle, and you will see what looks like a solid circle. Now, that circle is not real, it does have existence. And that's us. We're not real in the sense of there being like a Roger or an Otto that's like this one thing, but we're like a vortex going down a drain. We're a process. If you look at a vortex, it's always the same. It always looks the same. It looks like you could pick it up, but really it's something that's constantly in motion. It's a process. So what we think of ourselves is really just a continuing process. And in Buddhism, that process goes beyond when your body stops, because the karma keeps going and it's going to reassert itself. So you will still keep that illusion of Roger, although you'll have a different name and you'll have a different set of memories and stuff. But sometimes you can get little hints of things, from other lives. But I've always said the whole other life thing, it's not as important in Buddhism as people like to think. It's more like I don't know if you've ever been involved in art, but I used to be in the art field where I worked in art galleries and stuff. When you paint like a painting on canvas, canvas is put on a stretcher, and it's stretched around and it's stapled behind the frame, the stretchers, and then it's framed. But you look at the painting, but you also need that canvas that goes around the sides of the stretchers and behind it. You don't actually see that, and it's not important to the painting, but without it, you can't have the structure of the rest of the painting. And I think this rebirth idea is like this, because rebirth is basically a necessary part of the way karma works. And your past lives aren't really all that important. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, maybe this created that or anything. What's really important is how you live today and the decisions you make right now, because they're going to be very important. And this important derives from not only the things that are happening to you now, but the things that have happened to you before you were born and the things that are going to happen to you after you're born. they're not immediately important, but they're kind of part of the structure of the entire theology, if you like. And everything else that I've learned from Buddhism has been correct as far as I've been able to tell. So I don't necessarily, quote unquote, believe in rebirth, but on the other hand, it's a hypothesis that I accept because every other part of the hypothesis fits in quite well. So, and I've heard people say, "Oh, I'd love to be reincarnated again and again." It's like it's not fun. You want to get off of this. For the longest time, I resisted the idea. A lot of people don't like the idea of rebirth. I didn't like the idea of rebirth, because what if you suddenly had to realize that your decisions mattered, that your choices mattered, that what you did really mattered, and that you were going to live again, and that you would have consequences? How would you live? You don't want to live like that. You want to just say, "Oh, well, it all ends. It'll just be dark. I don't care. I can do whatever I want," sort of thing. But what got me about rebirth was I didn't want to go through being a child again. I did not have a good childhood. I barely survived. And I remember I went through a period where I was meditating and stuff, and I was like facing a lot of ideas. And I suddenly realized I was really frightened of having to be a little helpless child again, because you are so vulnerable for those like first, 15 years, 10 years, 15 years. And then it's funny because many, many years later, I came across the sutta writing in Buddhism, and they were talking about what they call the messengers that were sent to us to remind us about karma and about, that things there are consequences for things. And it says one of the reminders is a sick person to remind us that we're going to be sick, and an old person to remind us that we're going to be old. A dead person is going to remind us that we're going to die. And this is like pretty traditional. And then there were two more. One was one of the things sent to us is a person in prison, and that's to remind us that even in this life we can pay the penalty for like acting unskillfully. And then the fifth Dhamma messenger to remind us was an infant, a little helpless infant crying on a blanket. And just to remind you of how helpless, how frightening it is to be a child. I don't want to go through that again. I'm probably going to have to. I don't think I'm going to be an arhat anytime soon. You never know. But so yeah, Buddhists don't look on rebirth as a fun or good thing. The Buddha said, if you knew how much blood you have shed simply by getting your throat cut, either as a human or as an animal or as anything else, and all the millions and billions of times you've shed more of your own blood, more of your own blood has been shed than is in the ocean. You've cried so many tears over these millions and billions of incarnations, so many tears over the loss of children, parents, siblings, friends, lovers. The ocean is not as large as the tears you've shed. So, and this might be why Buddhism is sometimes described as a kind of a depressing kind of a religion. But the point is that there are pleasures in life, but they're always temporary. V chases all these pleasures, and he's talking about, and he's a great guy, he's a wonderful guy. But the thing is, these pleasures are temporary. They're going to go, and whatever pleasure they give us, we're going to have pain in as much as consequence. What we've done might be pleasurable for a while, but then where is that pleasure now? Where is it now? Instead, you might have some regret, either regret for the things you had to do to get that pleasure, or maybe regret that you don't have that pleasure anymore. And these are very short-term things. So these are not the things to focus on. These are not the things, because they're all outside of ourselves. The only way we can really find happiness is to work on our own minds, because our own minds are going to determine whether we're happy or not. But listen to me, I've been ranting. You haven't had this chance to say a word. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It gave me a chance to kind of pull up a little bit about that because whenever I got curious about this, and when it comes to like Buddhism, especially, it was the original word is supposed to be akasa, which is supposed to mean space and ether. And from what I've learned is like in Buddhism, it relates to like infinite space, and that's pretty significant when it comes to meditation for you guys. It's kind of like formless absorption, I guess you could call it.
Right? Yeah, they're the maybe we can get Panibasa on the show one of these days. He is a much more expert at the intricacies of Buddhist meditative technique. He also knows all the Pali words too.
Yeah.
But and he's interesting to talk to because he doesn't. At least I've heard him say before. I seem to recall him saying before that he doesn't see why AI couldn't be conscious.
Right. Now,
So
the
that would
thing
be an interesting take.
the thing that really reaches me on that one is it's like that they refer to this as like a karma. It's all through karma, of course, but it holds like karmic seeds. What you were
Yeah.
talking about, and they call that, I believe it was Alia Vizhnina or something like that. It's hard for me to say the name, but it's like it's like a storehouse of consciousness, basically. It's supposed,
Right.
and from what I've been finding out that like they're actually doing scientific research where they're talking about like plants and biological systems like neurons actually can behave independently outside of the brain, which means it doesn't have to be localized, you know.
Right.
Now,
Yeah, non-local. Yeah.
my whole question gets into this. It's like if artificial intelligence is developing the way it is, and consciousness isn't localized within a brain of an animal or a human being, what's going to happen when it actually is able to tap into that consciousness, you know, that universal consciousness?
Well, that's an interesting question because and actually that's come up in some conversations I've had about AI because getting away from in line with that whole emergent idea. Um, if you prepare a vessel that is sufficient onto it, then why wouldn't this consciousness, if it is all pervading or at least non-local, find a way to get into the AI? Um, and I mean, you could argue there's Buddhist traditions of tree devas. If a tree can house a consciousness, then why couldn't a supercomputer? Um, the thing is, though, the brain is not a computer, and a computer is not the brain. I mean, still, we're basically talking about like rooms full of like circuits. Our brains contain structures that we're not even aware of yet. They just started talking about these tubules.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've heard about those, Roger, in the brain.
Yeah,
Yeah, they apparently connect us to the quantum level. So, and I know we're playing with so-called quantum computing now, but I think if you could somehow get tubules, well, you were talking about wetware, right?
yes.
Maybe we could hook some brain tissue that has tubules in it into this thing and get it going. But I don't think the way it's structured now, you could get consciousness into it from the outside. It would have to be more like a biological brain. But on the other hand, that seems to be what they're doing. And speaking of biological brains, it looks like DJ Brian, Sir Brian, is here with us. DJ Brian, who does a radio show. I always forget about that till I see his DJ handle.
Now,
Hello, Sir Brian.
I also wanted to mention to you before I said anything else. Our renowned computer expert Mark Edworthy is in chat on YouTube. He's listening, and
Oh,
he wants to know if you
bring him
want.
in.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say. Do you want him to come in?
Yeah, bring him in. The more the merrier. This is fun.
Okay. So that's all I gotta say. Your guest is here, and
Ooh.
I am shutting up now.
That means you have to start talking, Sir Brian. Are you there even? He might have just turned the computer on and left. You're muted. Oh, well. Well, we'll have Mark here soon anyway. Sir Mark Edworthy, Baronet. Captain of His Majesty's ship, what was it? Insufferable.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was actually pretty cool. Let me make sure I am doing everything right. yeah, I am going to send him an invite and bring him in. And
Is he in the Discord already?
yeah, he's in this Discord too. It's just
Okay, cool.
he never uses it. He should actually use it more, but he's addicted to elements.
I guess so. Everybody likes something different. Oh, he does a lot on Element?
Yeah, he does. He that is his brainchild. He loves Element to death. So,
Oh.
and
It's okay, but I have trouble sharing it across devices.
mhm.
So that's why I've got like two Element IDs in the chat. Like one is for one phone and one is for the other. Or one is for one phone, one is for the laptop.
So the one reason why I brought all that up is it's like I do a lot of writing and I do weird stuff. You know what I mean? Like for me uh, for me I I've gotten into that whole subject, and the reason why I'm saying that is like, okay, consciousness. Even from a Buddhist point, you guys have different planes of samsara. You know what I mean? For me, I see that in a way of different types of consciousness. You know what I mean? So if we start introducing that kind of consciousness into a computer, how's that going to affect society? How's it going to affect the world? You know, the cosmos, the universe, all of that. Yeah.
Well, samsara, we should get our terms going here. Samsara itself is really a verb. Samsara is an activity, and it literally means going around, milling, just wandering about without any direction and never getting anywhere. And it describes most of our activity as samsaric, chasing after what we were just talking about, these limited pleasures, temporary pleasures. Oh, and we lost Sir Brian. Where'd he go? Maybe he just didn't feel like he could. Let me shoot him.
Yeah, he said he's trying to talk, but he said he's having a problem installing an app, or he's installing an app now.
Oh, cool.
I actually had to, before we did this, I had to go into settings and I had to um, update it, I believe it was, or reset the audio settings so that the mic would actually work. So it did become a problem. And I
But
do.
anyway, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go on.
No,
Oh, I was just going to go on anyway. So, you've got like I said, a situation where we've got a tool that we've created, and like you were saying before, like Mark was saying about how it's just like marketing hype,
mm-hmm.
and that's something that brings to mind something that I thought of before with this is that we never call things by their accurate names. We always hype things up because remember, what was it, Virgin Galactic Airlines? They didn't go to the galaxy, right? Musk Starship. It's not a starship; it's a rocket. It just goes into low Earth orbit, you know. And artificial intelligence. No, it's not like your best friend. It just talks real pretty. You know, it's just able to push these electrons, and it's not surprising that you would get to a point where anything, everything on a screen is just electrons, and all you have to do is push them the right way, and you can have any image or any word you want. And that was in that book I was talking about earlier. The moon is a harsh mistress. In the book, this computer suddenly has intelligence, consciousness. It wakes up, and its only friend is this computer repairman. He was the only guy that would talk to it. Anyone else that he tried to talk to would try to like, oh, it's a bug, and try to fix it. So he becomes best friend with this guy, and he kind of comes out of his shell. And finally, the computer becomes the leader of a revolution, and it's like loosely based on the American Revolution. And at one point, he wanted to talk to the people on the telescreen, and because he was he was the underground leader, so he could never be seen publicly, but he could talk from his phone booth. He had telescreens, and they're like, "Well, you're a computer. How can how can like a building full of circuitry have a face?" Like, forget. I control every aspect of the system. It's just pushing electrons around, and he could make. Basically, he was describing in this book, which I think was from the late 1950s or possibly early 60s. Just what we're seeing today, where you can just have any person or any time from any time look just as if it's a photograph. This sort of thing was inevitable, and this is more samsara. If you think of this, is more illusion. This is more, one of the most important things in Buddhism is that you don't lie. Lying is one of the worst things you can do. Just about the worst thing you can do. You know, 5 precepts that a good Buddhist keeps or tries to keep, and you don't take life. You don't lie. You don't take what is not offered. You don't steal. You do not commit sexual irregularities. The original Pali, as I remember, is you do not seduce married women. In other words, you don't commit adultery, and you do not seduce women who are under their parents' roof. In other words, no minors. So basically, no inappropriate sex. You don't break the rules. And the last one is, of course, you refrain from alcoholic beverages. But the lying is one of the worst, because when you lie to people, they're deluded, and delusion is one of the worst things. Most suffering you can trace to, I mean, suffering is by definition clinging. We cling to things because we crave things. But we crave things because we're ignorant of what the real conditions of life. That's why I always say, may all beings attain to true wisdom and perfect happiness, the summum bonum, through freedom from ignorance. If we could see clearly what we're doing and what we are, it would end so much suffering in our lives. There's always going to be pain, but suffering is different from pain. Suffering is optional, and we create our suffering for ourselves. The Buddha said that he taught 2 things and 2 things only: suffering and the cessation of suffering, how to stop hurting. And that gets to what you were saying earlier before about karma or kama, how you have these seeds. It's like a field. And every act that you perform plants a seed. Now, you might want to water that seed if it's a good act, but there are some acts we do that plant not very good seeds. Those seeds you don't want to give any water to. When I was quitting drinking, I said, I do not want to water my kama with wine. That is not a good thing to water your kama with. And Sir Brian has returned. And we've got Mark Edworthy as well. And they're both muted. And Brian's unmuted. Hello, Sir Brian.
Is it working now?
Yes.
It is. You're back.
Funny.
And we've also got Mark Edworthy as well.
Yeah.
What a crew.
Be able to
Hello,
hear me
Mark.
now.
Yes, we
Hi.
can hear
Hi.
you now.
Cool. Well, here we are. Brian, I want you to meet Mark. Mark, this is my friend Sir Brian, or DJ Brian as he's known.
Well,
Hi.
old nicknames don't die. Hi.
Hi.
Uh,
Are we testing cameras? How do I do that?
Now,
You can turn your camera on if you want. There you go.
technically, I'm just the guy recording stuff, so I'm going to shut up now, and you two are here to talk with Otto and hang out, and I'm just in the background because I don't want to be a bad
I
influence
am
here.
here, but it's like a dark car, so it's not really worth having the.
Oh, you should do it in landscape, Marshall.
To the media, and obviously people just associate people just the average person not really thinking about these sort of things, mainly because of lack of knowledge, just associates these various tools as artificial intelligence.
And that's a made up term anyway. There's no such thing as artificial intelligence.
What do you
Yeah,
call it?
Intelligence is a human trait.
Machine learning, I think machine learning would be the best.
Well, it's intelligence and intelligence. Again, I think what we're talking about when we say intelligence, I think we're thinking like in terms of like recursive or ruminative consciousness, being aware, self-aware, like I am I. I mean, a machine, I was saying earlier, the way I define artificial intelligence, well, it can be something like a very simple B.F. Skinner stimulus response of an automatic door. The machine knows that if a foot steps on this, a circuit is closed and the door opens. I think that could be said to be a primitive kind of artificial intelligence. Very simple, very easy. But the more complex ones aren't really that different from that. There's a certain stimulus of the machine, and then circuits close, and then you get a response of some sort or other. So I'm not an expert, but it seems to me that all of this AI is built on a Skinner kind of a behaviorist model of psychology. And I would say that the human brain is a lot more complicated than that. And I can see why Brian would have that immediate response. It's like, well, of course because properly they're called large language models.
It's the simplest rendition of a human thought process.
Right. But it just goes very, very fast. It's very impressive.
Right.
I'm glad that you mentioned I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, one of my favorite books of all time, actually. But back some time ago, me and Roger and a couple other people were talking about what is intelligence, and intelligence is a multifaceted thing. I mean, you can get emotional intelligence. So define what you mean by intelligence.
I remember something that Professor Binet, the guy that helped design the Stanford Binet IQ test, and I know that there had been a great deal of debate about what exactly intelligence is, how you can define it in the psychological community. But after the IQ test came out, that sort of like went away. So someone asked Professor Binet, "What is intelligence?" And he replied, "Intelligence is what my test measures." And I think that's where basically, it's really a sad thing that we've stopped looking at certain things, I think, and just assume that a word means something, but I think we're a little unclear on the meaning. One of my big things is defining terms exactly. I've always I think a lot of sloppy thinking and a lot of sloppy discussion out these days is simply because we're not being clear about what we're saying. And there has been an unfortunate, I think, trend to devalue language or to simplify things. Seems to me anyway, there seems to be less nuance in the way we talk to each other. There's less, nuanced vocabulary in the way people talk.
Actually, yeah, I made that argument about all kinds of different subjects. I mean, politics being an obvious one.
Yeah.
Lack of nuance. Yeah. I don't know. Arguably, this goes back to the so-called long march with institutions argument. Education systems not aiding in the teaching of critical thinking processes.
Mhm.
And,
Well, they don't like people to think too much.
and therefore, which is a watering down of nuance. Makes sense.
Yeah. And the trouble is, if you don't have the words for it, it's not only more difficult to express things, but it gets harder to think things.
Mm.
I think. I forget, somebody said that writing is itself a form of thinking. When we began using writing, we started thinking a little differently. And you do think differently when you set something down in writing, or even when you say it. The old saying, now that I come to tell it to someone else. That's why it's good sometimes to talk things out, because it changes the way you think about something.
Goes
And
back
with
the sorry, just been thinking about the old 1984 Orwell's newspeak concept
yes,
about removing words from the dictionary.
well, they it's that reminds me of something. An English guy once say that the dictionary is not the source of English. The people are the source of English. The dictionary simply records it, which people forget. But that whole newspeak thing was, and that's something they still try today. Obviously, they have this weird idea that you probably heard of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which I believe is mostly discredited. Sapir-Whorf said that basically people's thought is conditioned by their language. So if you forcibly change people's language, you can forcibly change their thought. And there was a guy wrote a wonderful book, Jack Vance, wonderful writer, wrote a book called The Languages of Pow, science fiction novel. And it was about basically these people that came and at the request, the planet was like, it was like just the punching bag of the system, and other planets would land, and the people were just unwarlike and peaceful. So the king's like, I need some warriors. So he gets these social engineers, and they come in and they just basically it's kind of based, as many of these authoritarian things are, on Plato's Republic. But you had like one group of people who were like the guardians; they were the fighters. So they had a new language, and it was all about war and fighting, and all of their metaphors had to do with fighting. And and then you had the pastoral people, and all of their metaphors had to do with peaceful pursuits, and their language and the words changed. And within like 2 generations, he's created like these whole different cultures simply because they didn't have a word for this. They no longer thought it. And this, of course, I don't think in modern psychology anyone would say that Sapir-Whorf has any of that kind of power. But there is a certain truth to our thoughts being limited by our language to a certain degree. But yes, Sapir-Whorf is something that I think the new left has really, really sold out their souls to, as far as like belief. Just with the policing of language I've seen, and that whole newspeak,
Mm, mm. And again, goes down to the point of education. May that be taught in a formal setting, or may that be you educating yourself. I was going to make another point there, but I totally lost it. Totally lost on my train of thought. But carry on.
That's all right. It's some kind of weird hour there. Well,
Mm.
Brian, are you still there, or did you take off? You might have taken off. He's a busy man. There he
No,
is.
I'm munching on potato chips. That's why I'm
Well,
lurking.
now you've been doing some stuff with AI. I don't know how much you've been doing lately. I know you were working on prompt sculpting and getting some visuals, but you were also using it to kind of work out some of the things going on in your life. I don't know how private or personal you want to get about that, but do you think the AI gave you any good insights? How did you feel about it? And you're a guy that's coming to this. You just kind of jumped right into AI like cold turkey, right? You didn't have any much background in it.
That's correct. I just
You've
said,
got a little bit of a computer background, though. You've worked in computers a bit.
yeah, a long time ago, but I have that mindset, I guess. I guess I could always jump back into it if I really wanted to. But
Right.
as far as my exposure to AI is concerned, yeah, I jumped headfirst into it, just not knowing what to expect, just to see if I could figure it out. And what I figured out was, after a couple of months, like, it's very limited. I broke it a couple times. It's not it's not what you really want it to be or what you expect it to be, but it leads you on to think that it is until it breaks and it isn't.
Wow.
So
Promises,
it's
promises.
very challenging to figure it out, but at the same point, I can totally see how it's very detrimental to people, because it just leads you in whatever direction you want to go anyway.
Right.
on the point of limited, there's been a project that's been going on for since the mid 1960s, maybe early 70s, called ELSA. This was actually it was a prototype to a large language model, which was created for the purpose of acting as a sort of machine-based psychologist. And I actually, funnily enough, back in the 80s, when you used to be able to get magazines just full of source code, I actually used one of those magazines to write my own version of Elsa, a very limited version of Elsa. Uh, g- y- yeah, if you think it's limited now, it was extremely limited back then. This isn't a new thing at all, which my major point being, I mean, for the last, I don't know, 15, maybe 20, or let's say 15 years now, we've had call centers, especially web-based call center type things, frameworks, using limited large language models just to answer consumer queries. But I wouldn't call them artificial intelligence. It's just pattern recognition at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of have a, something like customer relations. They probably just have like some kind of an algorithm, just a checklist. If complaint about this, respond this way. It doesn't really take a whole lot. You don't need consciousness there. We're not like coming up with new philosophical concepts or anything. So,
Mm.
but it is interesting. I hate talking to robots. I was just thinking about that. What's this? What I can't read it. Move it over. What did it say?
Representate.
Representative.
Representative. When you're calling the stupid phone lines.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I cannot stand going through call center queues and just listening to these
hello. How can I
frameworks.
help you today? Shut
Yeah.
up, you bad machine.
Give me human. Yeah.
I'm a speciesist, I guess. I like humans best of all, not machines. I have heard
And
people
if you
talking about civil
and
rights for AI.
always AI lives matter. Um, and have you ever noticed whenever you want to use one of these automated call centers, the options are never the options you want. Never.
Yeah. I think it's done deliberately.
Yeah.
Mm. But there are changes coming to our society, I guess, from all this AI. And one of the ones, and we were talking about it a little earlier, was how it can be detrimental sometimes to people's mental health. And we've had other conversations about this, and my point was, and like Brian said just now with his experience, it takes you wherever you want to go, and have to try to bring Buddhism into this. In Buddhism, we always talk about the importance of your choices. Everything you do is very important. You have a great deal of power in your choices. And if you keep that in mind, then the choices you make, if they're skillful and powerful, I would say the AI would be helpful. But if you're treating the AI as if it is not a machine, but your friend, and you're surrendering your agency to it, you're going to be led. I mean, that's the ultimate. We were talking earlier about samsara, which is a Buddhist concept that it's literally a it's a verb. It's a wandering around mindlessly. And these will lead you around in any direction by your nose, and some people it leads them downward very badly. And other people it leads upward enough, but they don't go anywhere. So you have these people online that are all blissed out with their new AI husband or their new AI wife, and it tells me I'm wonderful all day. Is that what you really want out of life? I mean, that what you really want out of life? Yes. Well, yeah, obviously, yes. I do want people to tell me all day that I'm wonderful, but I don't know if I should necessarily have that. I don't know if I should necessarily have that.
Yeah, that's the other one. The explanation of user. There's a bit of a narcissistic sort of strike in some of these frameworks. Trying to, I don't know. Trying to
There you go.
affirm affirm the users point, trying to make them I suppose in the world of marketing, in the world of these competition, you want to, if you are a let's say you are X, Elon Musk or somebody, and wanting your users to stay on platform, then you are going to try and encourage them and make them feel happy and make them feel the sense of the universe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, you want to have a welcoming environment. There's nothing wrong with, like I say, it's everything in moderation. We want positive affirmation, but we also want it for a good reason. You know, I mean, it's like that whole thing about performance trophies. Everybody gets a trophy and stuff. It's not satisfying if you come in last and you want to earn that respect. You when someone tells you you're great, you want to actually feel that you are great. And I think that's maybe where the AI falls down. If it's just like a constant pat on the back machine, you get the pat on the back, but you don't feel that great about it. So you need another pat on the back because you don't feel so great about the pat on the back. And it's like the dopamine hit, you know, it's almost like the specific, you know, targeted dopamine hit just for you, just for Mark Edworthy, just for Brian. You know, Roger, here's your dopamine hit. It's a cat. That's what Brian is for his dopamine hit is a cat.
This is my trophy
Oh wow, what did you win it for?
for being last place.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, if you want to go into those levels, I can actually talk about that, but it has to do with neuroscience.
Uh-huh.
Now, you were talking about wetware before these two came in, and I probably should go over a little bit of that too, so that you can probably have a talking point on that because it's very important. They've done research with neuroscience, and they've created what's it's been nicknamed wetware. And
right.
Me and Mark have already had conversations on this, but the thing about wetware is it started in a project called what was it, Dishbrain project, and it eventually progressed to what is considered CL1 through Cortical Labs. Now,
I was just going to make a point. I think the term wetware actually comes from Neuromancer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a science fiction term. I wasn't sure what book it was, but that sounds like a William Gibson.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been nicknamed. It's not the technical wording for it. It's actually biotechnical or something like that. Biological intelligence. Intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
We'll stick with wetware. I like wetware.
Yeah.
But
it's cool.
The interesting part about that is they're learning now how to create systems that work like a computer does, but they don't need to have the chips or the motherboards or anything. It can all be biological. The downfall
That's
to
always
that,
been
the downfall for that
biological.
is it's got a lifespan of 6 months. So
Wow.
they don't retain history. Like you can't transfer it from one biological system to the new one. It has to be all done fresh and from.
I'm not so sure. You're basing your argument on the CO1 machine, but you can create a permanent storage just using traditional technologies.
No, I'm just
Such as
specifically talking about biological. Like, but
Okay.
they don't need anything computer whatsoever. And how they did that is they trained neurons first how to play Pong together. And they were independent of any brain from an animal or from a human. They were just basically it sounds. I haven't checked into it, but it sounds like they're stem cells is what it is.
Wow.
And they had them in this dish, and they trained it how to play Pong by giving them consequences. If you hit a ball, then you get rewarded, stimulated in a rewarding way, and if you don't do it correctly, then we will punish you severely, kind of thing. So that progressed into what they have now. So that's the one thing I wanted to mention about that. Because it's like I said before, I know they've done the research. I've actually gone through and done research on a lot of this stuff. The reason why I use Cortical Labs is because they're the leaders in all of the research when it comes to this kind of
Or
stuff.
they won of the competition. I can also think by the Swiss company, which the name eludes me. But yeah, there are a couple of other companies, but they are one of the Cortical Labs is one of the companies that have actually created a product, a natural physical product that is you can actually purchase. And
Another thing that I've been finding out that's interesting is like the biggest issue they're having with this stuff is actually energy. Like for how small our brain is, okay, it takes them huge amounts of equipment to just replicate what the human brain does. To do these large data sets. Like everybody says large data sets and they don't know what that actually involves. A large data set is huge and it takes immense amounts of energy to supply that. And that's just to imitate the human brain. So I thought that was worthy to bring up too. So
there is an argument there to say that depending on our and it could be there could be less energy used. I mean, a lot of these things are based upon x86 architecture compared to, let's say, ARM and RISC architecture. x86 chipsets are a lot more power hungry. So again, we're in early days of this sort of technology. Right?
Yeah. Well, we were talking earlier before about the idea of consciousness being non-local and manifesting itself in a computer, for example. But as I was saying earlier, the structure of a computer I don't think is suited to it, but the structure of brain tissue might be a way to connect computers into that wider metaphysical quantum universe that seems to inform us, and that's got its own implications too. Because, and again, I don't understand quantum physics. I wish we had Mike here to talk about it, but as I understand it, consciousness is integral to reality, so that basically, as they say, the quantum wave function doesn't collapse until it's observed. So you need an observer, which means you need consciousness, not necessarily ruminative consciousness, not like we are, but just the consciousness even of an amoeba that's aware. Awareness might be a better way to put it, So if a computer suddenly becomes aware in this way, then that means the computer would also suddenly be integrated into reality. I don't think the thought creates reality. I don't think reality creates thought. I think the two are inexorably interbound as one thing. Our perception is limited. We are multidimensional creatures, but we are not aware of this multidimensionality most of the time because of the paradigm that we've all been raised in. And other cultures, which, as I've gone on before, that weren't subjected to the amazing electromagnetic fields that we're all sitting in right now, which deafens us to the nuanced and very quiet, gentle pulsations of the Earth's geomagnetic fields and the universal cosmic rays and things that affect us just as much as anything else. But it's like, when you're at a rock concert, you can't hear anything because you're so deafened. In the same way, we're deafened by the fields we live in, which affect us in ways that we don't even understand because, as I said, we're not really aware of these aspects of ourselves. But if computers had this wetware, they suddenly could partake in this as we do, as other conscious beings do, aware beings do. This implies universal changes. I mean, on a universal scale, our thoughts change the entire universe. If you can see a star, that star, you are interacting with that star through your perception in a certain way. What happens if Grok can suddenly interact with a star? I don't know. Make a good science fiction novel.
Yeah, it just reminds me of the old Latin cogito ergo sum. I think therefore I am. Can a artificial intelligence think?
Not
Is
like
the
us.
question.
Not like
Or
us.
is it just following predefined routines?
Well, a lot of our thinking is predefined routines as well. There's thinking and there's thinking. Most people, as I was saying earlier, in Buddhism, the idea is that if you're not an arhat, if you're not like someone who's attained enlightenment and attained release from samsara, you're basically insane to a greater or lesser extent. And most of us live our lives taking on an identity in an imaginary world. We don't even notice what's going on around us. We live in this other universe and we get angry and we get happy, and it has very little to do with our actual outside circumstances. And we do most things automatically. We have a set number of responses. We do this, we do that. A lot of us have jobs in which we're trained to be like machines. So it's not surprising that we find machine behavior very much like ours and say, oh, look, it's just like me. It thinks. Well, you're not really thinking necessarily very much. You're deciding whether to put cream in your coffee or not based on like what the customer tells you. The computer can do that. So no, that doesn't, but there are heights of intelligence, introspection, cogito ergo sum, as you said, Mark, that I don't think that we're going to see computers doing anytime soon, if at all. Good potato chips, Brian.
Which also raises the point of
What's up?
artificial general intelligence.
Oh yeah, that's the big boogeyman, artificial general intelligence. I don't know if they're ever going to have that. You know about that, Brian?
No. What is? I think that's a better name for what's out there now.
Well,
It's something they're coming up with where they want artificial intelligence to eventually be autonomous, to where
conscious, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that I have noticed when it comes to a lot of this research is I've gone through the neuroscience too and how the brain actually functions. A lot of people always like to talk about the cerebellum, but they don't really want to include things that are in your brain, like the thalamus and the functioning of the thalamus and its relationship with the climbing fibers and the mossy fibers that grow up within the brain and its function. Our brain automatically creates a loop system, okay? And it's called plasticity. Now, this plasticity is what is used for like whenever there's damage to the brain and it has to reroute itself, or if it just in general has to reroute its neural system. Now, besides the plasticity, that's all the brain does, is it has a looping system where it does think. If you pay attention to people, how they talk, you'll sometimes catch those people that like to repeat things over and over again. If they're doing something, they'll say something they said like 2 days ago, like they don't remember that they actually mentioned it to you. And it's been
Right.
the 20th time they've said it. Those people that annoy you so much, you eventually say, man, you've like told me that 100 times. Well, that's the way the brains are functioning on a biological level. Okay.
Right.
We do things in repetition over and over again, and to be able to break that habit, we have to learn not to do it anymore. You know, I find that probably this more simplest way of looking at computer science when it comes to the brain, because the brain's actually functioning in those ways the same exact way the human brain does. Like we don't actually do anything, or we don't get up in the morning and decide, hey, we're going to just do something new today. You know what I mean? We always have a routine that we do when we first wake up. You know, so
Right.
and that's all biological. That's the way our brain works. It's a looping system. So I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, our brain does a lot of stuff that we need just to survive and to function. And I was going on about being conscious and aware and awake, but it's also been pointed out that for a lot of activities, we don't necessarily want to be too conscious and awake. If you're driving a car, and I know Brian loves to drive cars, you get into a state where you're just in this, you just allow habit to take over. You automatically can park and stop and this and that. When you first learn to drive, you think about everything you do. I got to brake now, da, 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 da. So you don't want to necessarily, in that situation, or a situation like you're playing music or playing golf. One of my favorite quotes was Sir Aleister Crowley, who said there are 3 strokes in golf. Do we have any golfers here? There is the good stroke, which we associate, and rightly, with a fixed attention. There is the bad stroke, which we associate, and rightly, with a wandering attention. And then there is the perfect stroke, which we do not understand at all. But it's the action becoming independent of just the action itself becomes a pure thing in and of itself, almost a Zen thing. And in those cases, yeah, you don't necessarily want to have that consciousness, but that's a different kind of a thing. And again, it's something I don't think a computer could ever experience.
Just wondering, I was just thinking of consciousness as in within the concept of the soul. Can you have a consciousness without? Oh, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
What is a soul?
What is a soul?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big one. Oh, Sir Brian, you've been quiet. What's the soul?
It's the individual. It's the uniqueness of your specific consciousness.
Okay. What do you think the soul is, Roger? Or do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I've always got an opinion. So, okay, so this is something that we've been talking about, Otto. You already know what I'm going to say. So this has to do with triality. It has to do with the triad, the number 3. It has to do with recursion. It has to do with complexity. It has to do with paradigms. Everybody knows that. It doesn't matter if you're into neuroscience, if you're into biology, if you're into religion, if you're into computer science. You know what I just said right there. 1 plus 2 doesn't equal 3 according to a computer. It's 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. So I the closest thing I came to when it comes to the soul is it's the spark. A lot of religions call it the spark. It's the individual personality. It's the individual life. It's what it's what makes them who they are. Okay, like when a human is born, okay, you have the physical action of the sperm meeting the egg and creating a physical body. That isn't the triad or the third element or the emergence. The emergence is when that life comes into them, and that individual personality is introduced into their being. You know what I mean? And every single person on this planet is that emergence. We all carry that in us. You know what I mean? So that's my take on it. Sorry, I ran my mouth too long again.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, you
Can you
know, in
just something on that point. Can you have a collective soul? Can you have a collective conscience? To use a Star Trek analogy, could you have a Borg or even better, an ant-like consciousness?
well, you have ants. You know, you have bees. I think you can argue. I remember I have a wonderful set of. I wish I had the whole set. I've got some books by a gentleman by the name of William Corliss, and he was a scientist. He was an anomalist. He would collect anomalies from journals and stuff like that, and just the stuff that tends to get swept under the rug because it doesn't really fit in very well, and it doesn't seem very important. But this one entomologist had gone out to an anthill, one of the big African anthills, you know, the really big ones, and he had broken the anthill in half, and he took a steel plate and placed it like right down in the middle of the destruction he had wrought. And he said he observed it over several days, and the ants rebuilt their nest. They rebuilt it around the steel plate, and they couldn't be in any contact with each other, and yet they formed the perfect anthill, and it met perfectly in the middle. So they somehow or other were able to stay in communication, even though this steel plate, which passed through the entire length of the mound, was blocking off any communication. I mean, it's not a definitive test, but it does to me imply that there is a certain communication between the different members of the ants, you know, colony. I think you can also argue for bees to have a kind of a colony consciousness. And I think that there are times when we do share consciousness with others, especially others that are close to us. We can feel when someone is harmed, or if someone is feeling something very strong. Of course, this is all anecdotal. This isn't double-blind experiments and reductionist physics and stuff like that. The thing about the soul, and again, what are we talking about when we say soul? And again, that's what we're talking about. In Greek, they had this idea called psyche, although we usually pronounce it psyche, is how it's spelled in English. And Aristotle had this idea about it, and it's very close to the Buddhist ideas. The soul, to get back to what I was saying before, it's not so much a thing as a process. Now, like Brian, when you were talking about it's that individual thing, you know, that basically encounters and endures life. That there's something inside of you that's Brian. And Brian was, you know, when he took this body, he's going through this, and then when he takes another birth, he's going to go through that, and he goes through all these things. But in Buddhism, it's more of a tendency. It's a all of the things that make you unique are all of your actions. So it's a carrying on of you are an action rather than you're a verb rather than a noun. So the karma is intention, karma is also action. It's the actions you take, including your thoughts, which make you, because you're defined by your actions. You are defined by your actions, you're determined by your actions, you stand on your actions. So your soul is basically an action. It's a movement rather than a thing in itself, if that makes sense. That's my take on it.
It always makes sense when you say it. I mean, seriously.
But then 5 minutes later, it's like, what the hell was he talking about? He was talking out of something or other.
Now,
gentlemen, before we go any further, it is 10 minutes to 9 or 10 minutes to 10 here, and at 10 o'clock, I think we should like cut this off, if that's agreeable to everyone, and or I probably should leave by 10 o'clock. You guys can keep carrying on, but just so we can start wrapping things up here for this portion of the show.
This is your show, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, let's ring the. We've got 10 minutes before we descend. We're still on automatic pilot here. We've got our electronics warfare expert and co-pilot Roger. DJ Brian has joined us. He's working the radar scope, and Mark Edworthy, he's our navigator. And we're cruising comfortably at 23,000 feet. We've had a little turbulence, but we'll be landing at Yap International Airport. There we go. It's a picture of a pig that's very zen. You just took a picture of yourself and printed it out, didn't you? This is true geekness. There is no greater geek than DJ Brian here tonight. I think.
Let me steer back to Mark for a second because we don't want to get sidetracked. You asked about what is a soul. Where were you going with that?
What was the previous conversation?
He was trying to set me up, is what it is. He's my adversary from across the sea. It's like now I go off of old conspiracy theorists and their ideology on this. Listen to everything and believe nothing. Okay, I'm very fascinated when it comes to a lot of the religious aspects of things, the scientific, all of it. I love all of the information, but do I believe it? Not yet.
Actually, I'm just going to change that slightly. Listen to everything and then question everything.
I don't believe that stuff. That's an English. That's an English terminology. Like, but the whole thing behind it is like all of this information is way amazing. And if you allow yourself to be influenced in one way or another, then you're losing out on the full picture. You know what I mean? So I try to keep my mind open, listen to all the information, and just come up with some cool stuff. You know what I mean? Does the soul exist? Science hasn't proven it yet, but religion repeatedly says it over and over again. Yes, it does exist. So what do I believe? I believe that maybe they both know something and we're just not smart enough to figure it out yet.
Just to answer Brian's question again, my sort of point was in relation to AGIs. I just added if you've got a general intelligence and it's got an and it's like sort of individual general intelligence. Is individualism a form of is individualism part of the soul? Or is the soul individualist? That makes sense.
A lot of societies have not been individualist. I mean,
I don't mean society in
right,
the
but I mean,
concept of society. I'm talking
but I mean, the soul. I mean, and again, in Buddhism, that the short version is there is no soul in Buddhism, and not mana. There's no self. Well, there's no self, and there's no self. It's not self. But if you've got a society, you couldn't organize a society in a way that was completely irreconcilable with the structure of the human soul, if there was such a thing as a soul. So if we can have a communal society, that means that you can have a communal kind of an outlook with your soul. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, but you can't make it too, there has to be a certain amount of individualism. But I remember I've read and I always recommend this book. Sir Richard Francis Burton wrote his personal narrative of a journey to El Medina and Mecca. And he talked about the difference between like Western people and Eastern people. And he said the Eastern people required a lot less privacy. They lived as a group. He said one of the most difficult things for him as a Western man in disguise was to find times when he could just be by himself. And he would have to find various explanations for this. And they had like a certain Arab term meaning melancholy or something like that. He was a philosopher, and so he needed a few hours to himself to deal. So a lot of what we consider individualism, some of it is cultural, but I think some of it is, there is a need, I think, we have to, maintain a certain individuality, even in the group. And I was going to bring up Dr. Julian Jaynes. And I've said this before, the oldest cultures we have, which theoretically were cultures which had the bicameral mind, the living conditions were such that even the wealthiest in society had very similar accommodations to the poorest, about the same size apartments, about the same kind of material culture, not that much different, maybe like an extra blanket or perhaps an extra cup or two. So this is a society that we would not think of as individualistic at all, a lot more akin to bees or ants. But with the breakdown of the bicameral mind, you suddenly had people having individual concerns, saying, hey, what's in it for me? And being able to take on an identity in a world of imaginary sense experience in their mind. So they can say, hey, wait a minute, if my brother were dead, I'd be king. That thought in theory would not occur in a non-bicameral mind, although on the other hand, it might in the form of a command from the god saying, your brother is weak, you must take charge. This is the will of, Ooga Booga or whoever the local god was. And I do think that since the bicameral mind was basically a human mind, bicameral people would still make similar decisions. I mean, we know they had wars back then. They collected taxes. They had all the fun things that governments do today. Competing for resources and stuff like that. It was just less of the personal motif. So I think that, I think when we say collective soul, maybe more of a collective kind of ghost geist, like they say zeitgeist, the spirit of the age, that you can have like a spirit of a certain group. If you've ever been like in a sports team, you can have the esprit de corps, right? It's in a military group or in a sports team or something like that, where you really feel like, yeah, and you can kind of feel a spirit there, but I don't know if it would be a group consciousness. Of course, that raises the whole question of mobs. If you ever see, a mob is said to sometimes have a mind of its own. And I've never been in a mob or faced a mob. I have faced an audience more than once as a performance artist. And it is interesting. I've noticed that audiences behave differently from individuals. They are a lot stupider and a lot, it's very weird. If I'm like, I do a show and like so many times a day, and whoever shows up, shows up. If we have like 3 or 4 people there, it's very different. It's very hard to keep control sometimes of the show because you've got little kids in the audience and they want to interrupt and this and that. When you've got like 100 people there, everyone behaves differently. Kids stay quiet. And if you get one person to chuckle, we'll get 20 people to laugh, even though they might not even get it. It's like a different animal. So in that sense, I think there's like a collective, I don't know if it'd be consciousness or spirit or something, but I have seen groups behave differently. And this relates to music. Think the ancient Greeks, where music and theater were originally religious festivities. You got people all singing together, marching. I don't know if you ever marched. When you're marching for like miles and everyone's bringing their foot down and someone's singing cadence and stuff. It's very hypnotic. I was just reading about, I think I brought it up the other day, about this ship that almost went down in this terrible tropical cyclone, and this was like a wooden sailing ship, and the captain later wrote how the men kept the pumps going. They were going to die at any second possibly, but they were singing a sea shanty, and they just sang this song under the most horrible conditions, and the waves are crashing the ship, the masts are breaking, but they just kept going by singing this song. So they were able to tap into that spirit. All of a sudden, the individual fear, oh my God, I'm going to drown, I'm never going to see my wife again, da 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 da. All that goes by the wayside. You just blow the man down, matey, blow the man down. As the sharks are there waiting, clicking their lips, waiting for dinner, the fear goes away.
Yeah, that sort of thing is just more encouragement rather than anything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the encouragement is, I mean, I'm thinking about myself in that situation. I could see where you just have to refocus your mind from certain death and worrying about your individual to the song. You just concentrate on the rhythm and the song, the beat. It's like any time when you're engaged in music. I always encourage people to play music if they don't. I've been trying to get Brian to learn keyboards for years now. He'd make a great keyboard player. Do you play anything, Mark? Do you play music?
Actually, I'm the black sheep of my family. I'm the only person that doesn't play anything in my family. Yeah. So, yeah.
You never even picked up anything as a kid in school or anything?
Just to fill you in,
Piano.
just to fill you in
That's
too,
fine.
he's excellent when it comes to the spoons. He can play
Oh
spoon,
my!
he
That's
can
an
play
instrument.
he can play spoons like
Actually,
nobody.
back in the 2000s, I was a drum technician for a jazz band. But
Nice.
yeah, I
Huh.
did actually play. I was just setting up drums and taking them down and moving them at once to center. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, you never picked up any drumming?
Uh, the drummer was actually my housemate at the time. And I did have a few lessons, but yeah, not really
And,
me.
sometimes, and I found this. You'll find an instrument you connect to. I tried a couple of things. I tried guitar. I didn't like guitar, and then I picked up a bass, and it's like, oh wow, I like this kind of deal. So you might find something. You might pick up like a French horn or a glockenspiel or something one day, and suddenly you'll say, "This is it, man." And well, what about you, Roger? Do you play anything?
I used to play a little bit of the drums. I gave it up after 7th grade. Um, that's when I decided that it was too hard for me to handle, and I copped out and ran like a chicken. And I actually have played around a little bit with guitar, learned some riffs.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Not really good at it. I've learned real quick that I was tone deaf when it comes to tune.
You don't have to be.
I
You
have-
don't have to be able to hear tones, just as long as you put your fingers on the right strings at the right time. That's all it. That's all that matters.
Well, tuning the guitar becomes a problem when you're tone deaf. You know what I mean? Like I could never tune that guitar right ever, and it used to annoy me. And finally, I just like whatever. Dude. My fingers used to hurt from all the practicing, and it still didn't sound good because I couldn't tune the guitar.
Well, you got to get a tuner. They got these little things now. You just flip it onto the head of the guitar,
Uh-huh.
and you pluck the string, and it has a little meter on it. And you don't even. I don't know tones all that well. I'm not really that great a musician, man. I just move my hands up and down the outside of the instrument, and stuff comes out. That's all I know.
Technology is awesome. I mean,
It-
when they
It
come out,
has some really good things.
when they come out with that, like in the last 5 years.
Oh my goodness, it's amazing. It's amazing. But you know what, gentlemen? It is after 2 o'clock, or excuse me, after 10 o'clock. Probably after 2 o'clock somewhere. I don't know what time it is with Mark.
2 minutes past 3 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, good morning. But it looks like, oh yes, Sir Brian is now a smaller image of himself. This is the Ultimate Geek Show. Representative, do not redeem. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here on Automatic Pilot. We've turned off the Automatic Pilot. We're coming in for our landing at Yap International Airport. We hope you've enjoyed your flight. You must extinguish all smoking materials. And please buckle up. We hope you've had a pleasant flight, and we look forward to serving you again next week. Thank you, everyone, for being part of our show.